The thief who couldn't hide the truth. What would you do if jewels kept disappearing from a royal palace, even while guards stood at every door and every servant swore they were innocent? In the shining kingdom of Rubyland, fear had spread like smoke through the palace halls. Necklaces vanished during dinner. Ruby rings disappeared from locked rooms. Even the queen's favorite ruby hairpin vanished while she was wearing it. Everyone whispered the same thing in frightened voices. There's a ruby thief living among us. Rubyland was famous for its beautiful red jewels. The palace walls sparkled with ruby decorations, ruby lamps, ruby cups, and ruby statues. Even the king's crown had one giant ruby in the middle that glowed brightly whenever sunlight touched it. Visitors traveled from faraway lands just to see the royal treasure room. But lately, the palace was filled with panic instead of pride. Every servant hid their jewelry inside shoes, soup pots, flower vases, and even under mattresses. One cook baked her ruby earrings into a loaf of bread because she trusted bread more than people. Sadly, she later forgot where she hid them and almost served them during dinner. The palace guards tried everything. They searched rooms, checked bags, watched doors, and even questioned the royal parrots because someone claimed the parrots might be trained thieves. One parrot only replied, "Give me crackers," which was not very helpful. King Roland was growing tired and angry. Every morning he woke up to another complaint. "Your Majesty, my ruby bracelet is gone. Your Majesty, my ruby spoon disappeared. Your Majesty, someone stole the ruby button from my coat while I was still wearing it." The king slammed his fist on the table so hard that his breakfast jelly jumped into his beard. "I have the smartest guards in the kingdom," shouted the king, wiping jelly from his face. "So why can nobody catch one little thief?" The guards looked at each other nervously. One guard quietly whispered, "Maybe the thief is not little." Another guard whispered back, "Maybe it's the parrots." Finally, the queen suggested calling someone truly clever. "There is a wise dwarf named Borin," she said. "People say he can solve mysteries faster than a cat can steal fish." The king immediately sent royal messengers to bring the dwarf to the palace. 3 days later, Borin arrived riding a tiny donkey that looked even grumpier than he did. The dwarf had a long silver beard, bright eyes, and boots so old they squeaked whenever he walked. "Welcome, Master Borin," said the king. "Thank you," replied the dwarf. "Do you have food? I solve mysteries better on a full stomach." The king ordered a grand meal. Borin ate 7 pies, 4 roasted chickens, and so much pudding that one servant asked if the dwarf was solving a mystery or preparing for winter. While eating, Borin quietly watched everyone. He noticed who talked too much, who looked nervous, and who avoided eye contact. For several days, Borin walked around the palace pretending to be lazy and harmless. Sometimes he swept floors. Sometimes he polished windows. Sometimes he sat in the garden feeding crumbs to pigeons while secretly listening to conversations. People soon forgot he was investigating anything at all. The palace footman named Cedric laughed at the dwarf more than anyone. "That tiny old man will never catch the thief," he told the servants. "He spends more time eating cake than solving crimes." The servants laughed, but Borin heard every word. Cedric was handsome, polite, and charming. He carried royal messages, opened doors, served drinks, and bowed perfectly. Everyone trusted him. In fact, he was so polite that even when someone stepped on his foot, he smiled and apologized. No one imagined that such a sweet-looking man could be dangerous. One rainy evening, another ruby disappeared. This time it was the famous star ruby from the queen's private room. The palace exploded with panic. "That ruby belonged to my grandmother," cried the queen. The king turned red with anger. "Enough!" he roared. "Nobody leaves the palace until the thief is found." The next morning, Borin called every servant, guard, cook, gardener, musician, and helper into the grand dining hall. The room became crowded and noisy. One baker accidentally sat on a pie. A guard fell asleep standing up. A musician kept tuning his violin until everyone threatened to throw it out the window. Borin slowly walked around the room, inspecting every face. He looked into their eyes. He checked their hands. He even sniffed one man's pockets. "Why are you smelling me?" the man asked. "Because guilty people sometimes smell nervous," Borin replied. The man immediately fainted. Hours passed. Borin asked strange questions. What did you eat yesterday? Do you sleep well? Have you ever stolen a potato? The palace workers became confused. One servant whispered, maybe the dwarf himself has gone mad. Another whispered, at least mad people ask interesting questions. Finally, lunchtime arrived. Huge plates of soup, bread, roasted meat, and fruit were brought into the hall.